What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Now, we know the corporate press has been slowly dying over the years, right? And for some reason, they can't seem to understand why. They keep putting out these polls and they think it's this and they think it's that. But if they were to actually watch a video from me or from a lot of other people, as a matter of fact, zoom out a little bit, step outside your wheelhouse there and take a look, turn around and look back at your wheelhouse from, say, the average everyday American perspective, they will see exactly why the corporate press is failing. Social media, that's one of them. But the other one, right, because people still need news. A lot of people that care about this country, they want to stay in tune to politics. They want to know what's going on with culture, because culture drives everything, right? Drives, especially politics. Like, it's directly related to politics, but culture directly drives the political landscape, if you will. It's going to do that. There's no way around that. But if they were to step back and look, they would see that they are trying to sow a narrative that is just, it doesn't align with reality. It doesn't align with logic, if you will. It doesn't align with the views of the average everyday American. Now, we've seen and speculated for a while, although we can't prove it, that they're doing this to try to push culture in a certain direction. In other words, they're trying to make politics upstream or downstream from culture, and that's just not going to happen, right? The politics is trying to drive the culture. That's not going to work, because culture is what it is. It's a big behemoth. It's going to push everything else. But that hasn't stopped them from trying. And they can't seem to see that lying, trying to force the culture to change, has only made them look less and less and less legitimate. But they don't seem to get that. But that's what we're talking about today. But before we get into that, I need y'all to do me a favor. Like, take a second, if you don't mind. I would greatly appreciate if you just smash that there like button for me. That would be great, y'all. I would really, really appreciate that. And if you're trying to stay up to date with political news and how you're being manipulated by that political news, then smash that subscribe button for me. I would greatly appreciate that. And it would be in your best interest, because, once again, we point out all the manipulations, just exactly how you're being manipulated by the corporate press. But without any further ado, smash that like button. Let's get into this thing. Americans are exhausted by political news. TV ratings in a new AP NORC poll show they're tuning out, right? But is it because of, they're just tired of politics? Or is it something a little bit deeper? We'll figure that out. Let's analyze this thing right quick. As a Democrat who immersed himself in political news during the presidential campaign, Ziad Aunala, I guess we'll call it Aunala. We'll go with that. Sorry for the mispronunciation if I'm mispronouncing it. Has much in common with many Americans since the election. He's tuned out. People are mentally exhausted, said Anula, 45, of San Diego. Everyone knows what is coming, and we're just taking some time off. Right? Do we know what's coming? No, we don't know what's coming, to be honest with you. But from his perspective, he's a Democrat from San Diego, so yeah, we pretty much know where his political leanings lie. So, but maybe not. Television ratings are now a new poll clearly illustrate the phenomenon. About 2/3 of American adults say they have recently felt the need to limit media consumption about politics and government because of overload, according to the survey from the Associated Press NORC Center for Public Affairs Research. Smaller percentages of Americans are limiting their intake of the news about overseas conflicts, the economy, or climate change, the poll says. Politics stand out. Election news on CNN and MSNBC was taking up too much of Sam Gude's time before the election, said the 47-year-old electrician from Lincoln, Nebraska. The last thing I want to watch right now is the interregnum, said Gude, a Democrat and no fan of President-elect Donald Trump. The poll conducted in early December found that about 7 in 10 Democrats say they are stepping back from political news. The percentage isn't as high for Republicans, who have reason to celebrate Trump's victory. Still, about 6 in 10 Republicans say they felt the need to take some time off too, and the share for independents is similar. The differences are far starker for the television networks that have been consumed by political news. After election night through December 13th, the primetime viewership of MSNBC was an average of 620,000, down 54% from the pre-election audience this year, the Nielsen company said. For the same time comparison, CNN's average of 405,000 viewers was down 45%. Now, this is partly due to people kind of tuning out of politics, but they're not going to really be tuning out of politics for that long, because we've got Trump coming in, folks, and people are going to be on the watch out for the next scandal, the next thing Trump says that is shocking and egregious or whatever. But, I don't think it's really necessarily people tuning out from politics. Why do I say that? Because this was the podcast presidency. Places like, Steven Crowder, Charlie Kirk, the Young Turks, places like this saw a large boost in viewership over the past couple of years, right? Because they can get the news, they get the facts, and they don't get the narrative a lot, or at least when you go to places like Tim Pool or Steven Crowder or the Young Turks, their political leanings, right? These corporate press, the mainstream narrative machine, as I call them, they're supposed to be unbiased. That's how they portray themselves. But we know that they are very biased. They are a lot more biased than the biased news you get from YouTube, like podcasts and stuff like that, right? Like, at least you go to places, you'll get the facts, right? You'll get the straight facts, and that's it. And then you'll get some bias over here, right? Like, this is what I try to do. I make it a point to read left-wing news. So you get a blend. You get the narrative from them, and you can agree with me or not, but at least you're going to get the entire thing, right? You're going to get all the facts. If I find something that in their facts that is lacking, I'll generally go and find the facts and then throw up another news article. I'll cover a separate news article, right? Like, if they leave out some very important information, I'll also cover the right-wing part of the news to get all of the news in, right? If I happen to not know the information, or sometimes I'll just bring you that information and I'll throw a headline up, something like that, just to give you everything, right? Now, I'm not scared to say I have a bias. Of course, everybody has a bias, but I think it's mostly that people are just sick and tired of being lied to. They want some real, authentic news coming from somebody who's not trying to be a corporate robot, right? Like, that's something I heard from Cenk Uygur a lot. He's talking about all these politicians as corporate robots. Well, that's the same thing in the mainstream narrative machine, right? These people are just corporate robots. They just blah, 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 blah. And it's like, hang on, like, you're lying. You're outright lying. Where's the authenticity here? Where's the unbiased news, the most trusted name in news, right? Like, MSNBC and all these places are just utterly failing. But, that is to say that not all of the television cable news is failing, right? Like that's how they're trying to portray this, as, oh, people are just tuning out. Is that so? And then they debunk themselves. Check this out. At Fox News Channel, a favorite news network for Trump fans, no. The post-election average of 2.68 million viewers is up 13%, Nielsen said, since the election. 72% of the people watching one of those three cable networks in the evening were watching Fox News, compared to 53% prior to the election, right? So that just blows that narrative all the way apart. So they're watching Fox, and they've stopped watching CNN and MSNBC, ABC, CBS, and all these other places. I wonder why that is. Wonder why. It's not because, oh, Fox is a favorite of Trump. Actually, it's not. Trump, as a matter of fact, has gone after Fox a lot for lying about him and blah, 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 blah. That's not his favorite news network. We all know this, right? Trump loves OAN and I think Newsmax. He would much rather watch those places than Fox. It's just Fox happens to be a little bit more balanced than all those other places, right? You know, say what you want about Fox, but they are much more balanced than CNN, MSNBC, and all these places. Now, that is not to say that they don't try to portray their own narrative. They sure do. Not gonna shy away from saying that. I'm not a big Fox fan. I am not a corporate news fan at all. I would much rather get my news from somebody who's trying to be authentic, right? Because these places, like I say it all the time, I have no interest in lying to anybody, right? If I lie to everybody out there and they find out I'm lying, they're just going to stop watching me outright. Now, you might think, well, the same could be said about the corporate news. Well, not really. They have these deals with the cable networks. They have guaranteed income, right? They're going to get, viewership, blah, blah, blah. They're going to get money from these guarantees, right? So they're guaranteed to get ad sales and all this other stuff so they can run a narrative even though it's lying. Now, eventually they will go out of business, right? If they continue to lie, but they're always going to have some viewership just outright. And as long as these cable companies carry these stations, they'll be there. There's guaranteed money just about. Now, sure, I understand they could get taken off the air, but, you have to go down a really bad road, right? Like, as long as you're getting viewership, like the fact that MSNBC and all these places are only getting hundreds of thousands, that's bad. That's really bad. There are many podcasts that get much more than that, right? Like Timcast. He was talking about this a little while back. I caught a video that he was talking about his viewership, like daily, is in the millions of people. That's insane. That's just outright insane, right? So the fact that these cable TV networks are down 45% into the hundreds of thousands of people, that tells you something. Yeah, people aren't just tuning out of politics outright. People are turning away from this corporate news over here to some authentic news that they can get from a real person who's not a corporate robot, who you can tell that if they are trying to portray some narrative, they are at least telling you that, hey, this is my political leaning, and this is what I think about this. They're giving you the facts with an agenda. They're not giving you the agenda and then dabble some facts in with that. There's a vast difference between those two. It might sound the same, but it's very, very different. A post-election slump for fans of the losing candidate is not a new trend for networks that have become heavily identified for a partisan audience. MSNBC had similar issues after Trump was elected in 2016. Same for Fox in 2020. Although that was complicated by anger, many of its viewers were outraged by the network's crucial election night call of Arizona for Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden and sought alternatives. MSNBC had its own anger issues after several Morning Joe viewers became upset that host Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski visited Trump shortly after his victory last month. Yet, while the show's ratings are down 35% since Election Day, that's a similar drop than the network's primetime ratings. Exactly. Yeah, there was a lot of backlash from that, by the way. CNN points out that while it has been suffering in the television ratings, its streaming and digital ratings have been consistent. MSNBC can take some solace in history. In previous years, network ratings bounce back when the depression after an election loss lifts. When a new administration takes office, people who oppose it are frequently looking for a gathering place. I'll be tuning back in once the clown show starts, Anula said. You have no choice. Whether or not you want to hear it, it's happening. If you care about your country, you have no choice but to pay attention. You know what, my guy? I would suggest staying away from MSNBC. Just outright. Just stay away from those people. Right? Like, I say that. You want to know what they're saying, but just don't get your news solely from MSNBC. When you hear a story on MSNBC, go to Fox to corroborate. Hear their side of it. Hear both sides. That's what I suggest. You know, you want some biased news? Come over here to me. Hear a story, right? But see, I mostly cover stuff you're not going to hear about in the corporate press. So, you know, the stuff I cover, like, you can be guaranteed that I cover left-wing news because I'm not left-wing. So I want to give you a good balance of things, like I was saying earlier. But, you know, that is what it is. I'm not going to cover right-wing news. And if I do, my longtime viewers know this, I will let you know right from the start. This is a right-wing publication because there is no left-wing news organizations covering a specific story that I personally want to talk about. That's the only reason I ever cover any right-wing news. Everything else is left-wing news. But the ride may not be smooth. MSNBC's slide is steeper than it was in 2016, and there's some question about whether Trump's opponents will want to be as engaged as they were during his first term. People are also unplugging from cable television in rates that are only getting more rapid, although MSNBC believes it has bucked this trend, eating away at audiences before. The poll indicates that Americans want less talk about politics from figures in general. After an election season where endorsements from celebrities like Taylor Swift made headlines, the survey found that Americans are more likely to disapprove than approve of celebrities, large companies, and professional athletes speaking out about politics. Still, Good is among those discovering other ways to get news, which he does want to pay attention, including on YouTube. Thank you, my guy. Hey, look, I would advertise for this channel here. You should tune in, subscribe, smash that like button, and share this video anywhere and everywhere you can. MSNBC is also in the middle of some corporate upheaval that raises questions about potential changes. Parent company Comcast announced last month that the cable network is among some properties that will spin off into a new company, which will give MSNBC new corporate leadership and cut ties to NBC News. This is very good news, y'all. Some of the Americans who have turned away from political news lately also had some advice for getting them engaged again. Good said, for example, that MSNBC will always have a hardcore audience of Trump haters, but if the network wants to expand its audience, then you have to talk about issues, and you have to stop talking about Trump. Kathleen Kendrick, a 36-year-old sales rep from Grand Junction, Colorado, who's a registered independent voter, said she has plenty of people loudly spouting off about their political opinions on the job. She wants more depth when she watches the news. Much of what she sees is one-sided and shallow, she said. That, my friends, is the main reason why you should subscribe to this channel. Because, like I was explaining earlier, I read left-wing news. I consider myself a conservative, so I find that to be a good balance. You're going to get the news from the corporate news, but you'll also get my spin on it, which I also go and fact-check a lot of this, debunk a lot of their narratives. That's what I do, is debunk the narrative and give my opinion on that, right? So, you know, this is a good balanced place to get news that you're probably not going to hear about in the first place, mostly relating to government garbage, as a matter of fact. But, you know, it is what it is. You get a story, but only part of a story, Kendrick said. That's right. It would be nice if you could get both sides and more research. Once again, hey, legitical response. Just subscribe to Matt Van. That's me, by the way. Anula, similarly, is looking for more depth and variety. He's not interested in watching the angry man on the corner yelling at me anymore. He said, once again, subscribe. It's kind of their own fault that I'm not watching, he said. I feel they spend all this time talking about the election. They made it so much of their focus that when the main event ends, why would people want to keep watching? Exactly. That's why I didn't cover a lot of election stuff. I try to stick to news. I try to stick to things that I feel is important for you guys out there to know what's going on so you can be informed about who you're going to vote for, right? I try to give you guys the best information that I can. I'll research every single one of these news articles that I read up. I'll go and fact check a lot of this stuff, and I will debunk it if I find it to not be true, as per my last video. Right? The news said something about Trump suing the New York Times. Well, I'm like, yeah, I hadn't heard of that lawsuit. So I went and searched it up, and lo and behold, it was an outright lie. The poll of 1,251 adults was conducted December 5th through the 9th, 2024, using a sample drawn from NORC's probability-based Amerispeak panel, which is designated to be the representative of the U.S. population. The margin of sampling error is blah, blah, blah percent. Who cares? Right? This is the problem with polls. This is why I can't stand polls. And another reason why I covered this, so I could talk about polling. Right? They'll take 1,254 Americans and then say, all of America is like this. No, I'm sorry. I can't stand that. Right? They have these people, these sections, these groups of people that they constantly poll. They'll continually poll these same people. They'll get slightly different results, right? But that's not representative of America, for crying out loud. Now, I understand polling places, it's hard to find a good, cutout, if you will, of what America actually thinks. Because when you're only polling 1,200 people, out of 340 million people, that's a very, very tiny sliver. That, once again, that would be like going to the ocean, having one of those little 10-ounce coffee cups, scooping up a cup of water, looking at it, and seeing no fish, and deciding that there's no life in the ocean. That's just utterly ridiculous, right? Now, that's why I can't stand polls. Can't stand them whatsoever, but that's what the corporate press, that's where they get a lot of their, 70%. You hear those stats all the time. 70% of America says this. 80% of America thinks this. Well, that's not true. And I always make it a point to point that out. Because they're just sampling a very small sliver of the exact same people over and over and over and over and over again. Right? They have different sets, and different polling places have different sets of people. Right? That's why aggregate polling is very important, because at least you get a better representation of what the population thinks. But it's never going to be accurate. It's never going to be within a 3.7 percentage point margin of error. That's just not the case, right? All 1,200 of those people could think one thing, and the vast majority of America thinks something totally different. That's why I can't stand when people say, 80% of Americans say this, because that's not true. That's just outright lying to everybody, and they know it. They know they're lying when they say it like that. What they should say is, we polled this many people, and 80% of 1,200 people think this. That would be a much more fair analysis of that, right? I can't stand it. In other words, can't stand that they do that. They say all of America is like this. But, I've harped on that for a while. But I think y'all get the point, right? The corporate press is failing. And, places like this, they're not doing too bad. Not doing too bad at all. But I think people would be better off getting their news from people like me, who at least I'm going to read left-wing news and give you a right-wing opinion. So you can get some sort of balance going on, right? At least a decent balance. But I think that's all I got for this one. I want y'all to let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. That's something else that I love to do. I love getting y'all's input, right? I love that. I don't get as much input as I would like, but, hey, that is what it is. But want y'all to let me know what y'all think. That's all I got for this one. I want to thank everybody for watching, and y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.